and she's going to be speaking about neurodiversity. It has been, again, amazing to work with you. You're really confident and you can do it. And I just want you to shine, okay? Thank you.
What is laziness? Why are people with ADHD characterized as lazy so often? Well, to explain, I'd like to begin with a small experiment. So, can I have 2 volunteers from the audience, please? Yeah, come on. Sure. So, I'm going to give both volunteers the exact same task, to hold up an object for as long as they can. Can you stand back to back for me? So while we leave that to run, I'm going to go through a key theory we need to understand: executive function. So executive function is what allows us to access information, think about solutions, and implement them. It's the bridge between the thinking and doing parts of the brain, linking the 3 types of mental function: working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. How's it going? You okay? So conditions such as ADHD and autism mess with this, causing executive dysfunctioning. So our brains can't run the path between wanting to and doing correctly, causing a state of paralysis. So put simply, even though the task might sound the same, the experience will be completely different. You okay there? Just switching arms. Yeah. You look like you're starting to struggle a bit. You okay? Yeah. Okay. So how come you're struggling so much more than the other person?
I don't know.
You're much weaker than the other person, given you're having to change arms, or you're just being lazy with it, just make it easier for yourself?
I guess I must be a bit weaker.
Okay, well, obviously, she isn't just being lazy. The game's kind of rigged. So even though the task might have sounded the same, the experiences and specific circumstances completely discredit this. Right, thank you. You can go back to your seats. So just as in our experiment, people with ADHD and autism have a constant mental drag or weight pulling them down, meaning any simple task can quickly become much more physically and mentally exhausting. And this is overwhelming. When the brain becomes overwhelmed, for anyone, it always responds the same way, by activating the acute stress response, so fight or flight, or in this case, freeze. So our brain recognizes something is dangerous, so it stops us from doing it. But the issue with this response is it gets more and more problematic when someone has ADHD, simply because of how our brains process information. We handle input and stress differently, so our brains view these simple tasks as much harder, much heavier, complicated, and much more overwhelming. But to the outsider who doesn't have this same weight, we're avoiding or struggling with the task out of laziness. And it's all too easy to internalize this. So another person who has the same task as me isn't struggling at all, so why am I? Maybe I am just being pathetic and weak. Maybe I am just being lazy. Study at the University of Pittsburgh and University of Chicago found that 18% of adolescents with ADHD suffer from low self-esteem, social anxiety, and depression. Harmful ideas about yourself are internalized. You believe yourself to be inadequate, not trying your best, lazy, and your self-esteem plummets. And this only gets worse with time. In fact, children with ADHD are around twice as likely to attempt suicide and over 5 times as likely to have suicidal thoughts and intentions than their peers. So why do tasks hold such a different weight for my community? Well, firstly, let's say that on a given day, you have to tidy your room, do the dishes, and do the laundry. How many tasks is that? Well, in theory, 3. But for someone with ADHD, that would easily be broken down into 30 or 40 smaller tasks, just because of how our brains process information. So tidying your room, for example, would be broken down: task 1, standing up; task 2, assessing the room; task 3, gathering the clothes; task 4, sorting what needs to go in the laundry, and on the tasks would go. Each task presenting its own complications, weights, and barriers. And for your brain to process that much information, that many tasks, is overwhelming. Or, secondly, let's say that on a given day, you have to clean the house. Is this an easy task? Well, it's too ambiguous an instruction for there to be an easy answer to that. There's too many different things it could mean. Now, for a neurotypical, that might be around, but for someone with ADHD, that ambiguity is very overwhelming and, quite frankly, terrifying. Because in either situation, our brains can't entirely process the task. It gets overwhelmed, and a phenomenon called ADHD paralysis sets in, our version of the freeze response. So, although that picture might seem pretty bleak, there is a silver lining, because every day it's becoming easier and easier for us to function because of growing acceptance and understanding of these conditions, both externally and internally. Best example of this I can give you is the day I received my diagnosis for autism. It's one of the happiest days of my life, not because it would solve any of my problems, so the weight is still very much there, but because it's like being able to turn around and see that my weight is very different to other people's, and know that I wasn't just being weak or lazy. Others can't see it, and it's still just as heavy, but being able to relieve that mental exhaustion of fighting this constant mental battle against my self-esteem can quite literally be the difference between life and death for my community. And there's plenty of things you can do to help as well. Just giving us support and understanding when we're struggling can make a world of difference. Simple things like using clear, precise language can go a long way to helping this. For example, instead of telling an autistic person to clean the house, say vacuum the carpets, mop the floors, dust the picture frames. Specific, non-ambiguous. Be concise. Tasks, and please don't call us lazy, because I promise we are trying our best. And finally, remember, you can't see the weight of other people's tasks, so please help make it seem a little bit lighter.
Thank you so much. So next.